Welcome to finally another camera comparison, and it's a good one because it's the Xiaomi 15 Ultra, just recently released and launched at MWC in Barcelona, with the then Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra and the iPhone 16 Pro Max. Front-facing cameras here, this is 4K 30 frames per second. They are using electronic image stabilization. I'm swapping over the audio sources so we can have a listen to which one of these phones has the best microphone and best audio quality. Short little jog now, testing out that electronic image stabilization. Which one do you think looks the steadiest here? And I just wanted to point out that all of these phones are on the latest firmware updates. With the rear cameras now, this is our ultra wides. So we are looking at 4K 30 frames per second across all three. Ultra wide cameras here with electronic image stabilization. I can see that one phone has a slightly wider field of view. And I'm just going to jog down these stairs here, but before I continue, swap over to our main cameras, which do have optical and electronic image stabilization. And a bit of a jog. Which one do you think is the steadiest? And over to zoom camera. So I go to 5x optical with our iPhone, 5x with the S25 Ultra, and 4.3x optical zoom max with the Xiaomi 15 Ultra, and that is there at the moment. Stability across all three is looking reasonably good. Just walk a little, not that you would do that. And I'll take this now up to 10x preset with the Samsung, and then 10x here with the iPhone. Difficult conditions because the sun's overhead, but what I'm zooming into is in the shadow a little bit there. So with the Samsung, this now goes up to 10 times as well. So which one do you think it's the steadiest and has the best image quality for the zoom cameras? Back now to the main camera, and there is a little bit of wind, not a lot, but if we do hear any wind noise, it's going to be a good test of how these different phones handle that wind noise. Finally back to those ultra wide cameras. Now the Android phones, they have 8K video. The iPhone does not. And with our 15 Ultra, we have 8K on all of the cameras. So the ultra wide, the telephoto, portrait camera, and the main camera. And this is currently the main cameras at the moment. So I can click and go to the ultra wide with the iPhone, but that's only 4K. I can use the zoom camera with the Samsung. But once you start recording, you can't swap over the cameras with either of them with 8K footage, unfortunately. And now the 5x optical with the Samsung and 4.3x optical zoom camera with our Xiaomi. And pointing at the castle of Denia here, comparing that to the iPhone, it should look on the Android phones just a little bit sharper because it's the 8K resolution, so we're gaining a bit of detail there. However, I've scaled this down to 4K, but it will still look a bit sharper than the iPhone. Stepping it up now to low light video, will the 1-inch sensor here have an advantage? Will the video just be a little bit better? Well, looking at the screens now, I can see that there's a little bit of lens flare coming through with the iPhone, and yes, with the Xiaomi 2 as well. And the S24 Ultra, I would say, has the least lens flare, as you can see, which looks like UFOs in the sky at the moment, which I'm sure half of those reports are probably just lens flare and stupid people. But anyway, stabilization not looking as good as daytime. And to me, there seems to be a clear winner when it comes to low light video. Over to stills and portrait photos. So very different style across all three of them. The iPhone with the typical warmer tones to it. Samsung's a little bit warm to as well. And the Xiaomi, definitely you can see quite a different look to it. More of a vintage look. This is the portrait master mode. Sorry, the Leica portrait. And it certainly has its own style to it. The shadows are a lot darker, but I like the way the skin tones do look. The stitching, I'd have to say, is probably the best on the iPhone. But overall, I like the Xiaomi photo. You don't have to agree with me on this one. It's all down to preference, of course, all subjective. Selfie portraits, however, the Xiaomi, I'm a little bit orange. And then the iPhone is a little bit too white, the color balance. And if we're going off the stitching, I'd say that again, the iPhone stitching is the best, but the skin tones and the color, the best with our Samsung, which for me is the winner for the selfie portrait style photos. Now, this latest Samsung patch, which just recently came out, all phones are on the latest firmware, of course, does a very good job with the low light. It gets the white balance more true to life, and I happen to like what I'm seeing with the Samsung here versus the other two phones. But then optical zoom, this is a 5 times on the Samsung and the Apple, and the Xiaomi's 4.3. This is where the iPhone pulled ahead with the best shot. It seemed to have better stabilization, and that definitely helped out with the zoom low light photos. Daytime optical zoom photos, they all look good, but I find the iPhone personally to be just a bit over sharpened. Second place, the Samsung. And number one for me, I like the processing and the fact they haven't gone overboard with the sharpening, the Xiaomi. No surprises with this zoom shot. This is at 30 times. The megapixel advantage that the Xiaomi has, being 200 megapixels, it really came into play here, and it captured so much more detail and overall a better shot than the other two phones. So a clear win there for Xiaomi. Ultra-wide HDR test, and if you look at the details in the shadows, it's the Xiaomi that pulls ahead. Better than the iPhone, better than the Samsung. And again, the iPhone and Samsung have a bit of over-sharpening happening. I prefer the Xiaomi shot, and its HDR is clearly superior. However, not always. Look at this shot here. I want you to focus on the curtains to the left of the room. You can see that they are overblown with the Xiaomi and the iPhone. It's the Samsung that did the best in capturing the overall exposure, getting those details of the curtains without overblowing that, the fireplace, and well done, Samsung. Samsung again pulled ahead with the white fur of Vera. Samsung pulled ahead again with this shot of my cat Vera. You can see that there is a bit of a different shade to her white fur, and that is in real life like that because she often loves to run around and dig in the dirt, so her white is not pure white. The Xiaomi is overexposing a little, which can happen, and we're missing some of those shades of white also with the iPhone, so it's the Samsung that wins this shot. This test, I'm looking at the colors and clipping of the white petals. Now, there are different shades to those white petals. All three of the phones pick up some of that. The worst is the Xiaomi. Again, they're just a tad overexposed. However, where the pollen is, that's captured really well. The Samsung captures that quite well, and all the details inside. And the iPhone is also good. So really, I feel a bit of a tie between the Samsung and the Apple phone here, and a definite third place, the Xiaomi, even though all three of these shots, I think, do look really good. Quickly recapping now, and remember, this is subjective, folks. So I think the vlog footage, the Xiaomi, I quite like the skin tones and the audio quality from the Xiaomi, to me, is the best. However, it's a little more susceptible to wind noise. You have to be careful with that. For the main cameras for video, the iPhone, it's still hard to beat, I feel, but the Samsung had a better white balance at times, and for zoom shots, that was clear that zoom video stabilization was the Xiaomi tend to be a little bit more steadier, but then low light, the two Android phones fell to bits, and the iPhone with low light video was the clear winner. When it came to stills, I think the portrait, it's all subjective, as I said, but I think I like the Leica portrait mode. It's a definite unique style to it. It looks a lot different. Yes, it's a bit warm. The shadows may be too dark for some people, but I find that the iPhone looks just a bit too artificial. There's too much sharpening going on. Samsung portraits also, they're good. And the stitching on both of those phones are also excellent. But I like the Leica look. Not all people will, I realize that. And then we have HDR with ultra-wide especially. Xiaomi was the winner. I love the fact they don't over-sharpen. Zoom shots, well, the superior hardware with the Xiaomi was the leader there, definitely. Low light, Samsung. They've done a good job. The latest patch has definitely improved things. I feel tweaked those cameras just a little bit. So do you agree with my findings? Let me know in the comments. And thank you so much for watching this camera comparison.